Hi everyone, welcome back to my abandoned family home. Today we are going to be looking at the garage. And I forgot my mic clip, so this is what we're working with. Good thing it's magnetic. I would hate to do that TikTok thing. Anyways, for context, I started working on the garage a little over a month ago. It was the very first thing that I did because it was completely piled all the way to the ceiling with debris. And it was actually spilling out into the back lot, which was horribly overgrown. And so while there was still some fall weather and it was a little bit warm outside, I wanted to kind of work outside as much as I could, try to clear up the back lot and free up space. That way it's just easier to park and maneuver as I come and go while working on this project. And so I started on the garage, and I vastly underestimated how difficult it would actually be, how much stuff was actually in there, and it ended up taking me 2 weeks to get the whole thing done. And so the footage that you'll be seeing here is from over a month ago, back when it was a little bit warm outside still. And since it was roughly a 2-week process, I think I'll probably split it into 2 parts because there was several hours of footage. So without further ado, let's get to that. Alright, so the first day with the garage, this is what I found myself looking at, and I know it's a little bit hard to tell with the way the camera is set up, but the door is stacked all the way up to just about the ceiling. And you might be able to see the sense of scale. The pile of junk is nearly as tall as I am here, and so it's completely inaccessible. Now, on this first day, I was vastly underestimating how bad of a project this was going to be, because I believed that it was just a bunch of loose wood in there and roofing material and things like that. And so I was convinced that I could just restack it and that would dramatically reshape the space, and maybe this would take like a day or so of just organizing everything. And here you can see me taking down the trees that are blocking the entrance, because at this point there were even trees starting to grow in front of it, just up through the cracks in the asphalt. But yeah, I was convinced that if I just approached this pile of junk and just organized it and stacked it, that I could make the garage accessible very, very quickly. I did not realize at the time how dense the pile actually was, and that was something that I wouldn't discover until I really broke into it and got in there. And just to hopefully assure you guys, the video quality and the camera angles, all that stuff will get better over time. Like I said, this footage was recorded over a month ago. I was just starting out on this project. This is some of the earliest stuff I did, essentially, and I was still kind of figuring out how to go about filming everything. And so I didn't have all the best settings dialed, and some of the quality is a little bit lower, but I promise that it will get better. Just these first couple of videos are going to be a bit rough because this was essentially me getting my footing in this. And one of the first things that I discovered upon digging into this was just the surprising number of tires that were mixed in with the loose scrap wood. I knew there were a few just because they were visible, but every time I thought I'd seen the end of it, another one would just kind of appear. And while all the rotten old wood is one thing to deal with, I find that tires are particularly annoying in a different way. Right, so one of my first thoughts was to take all of the flat pieces and lay them all together and get them in a nice, neat pile. And so my instinct approaching a giant stack of wood like this is just to take the most similar pieces and kind of group them together and then slowly pare it down from there. And so I started with these big bookshelf panels. These were actually retail fixtures from when Borders went out of business. My aunt had bought some of the fixtures from the nearest one as it was closing down because she has a very large book collection, and I think she very briefly used these shelves to organize her books onto, and then after a few years decided to get rid of them. And so they got thrown off the back balcony and summarily stacked into the garage pile. And now about 15 years later, they're my problem. So that's all good fun. And initially, I figured I would take this big pile of large flat boards, like the big flat materials and things, and kind of just stack them all together, and I could put them alongside the garage just so they would be kind of out of the way, since they would stack pretty neatly as compared to everything else. And so one of the first things I had to do was actually cut back the overgrowth along the side of the garage, just to give myself actually the space to do that, because where all those trees are growing over there is a patch of dirt. There's like a 2 or 3 foot deep patch of dirt next to the garage. And so as you can see, it just has become overgrown. And so that's the patch where I was going to kind of create my pile. And after sawing all these trees down, I kind of just dragged them out into the adjacent lot and tossed them on a pile on the other side of the garage, because there's actually just an open field where there used to be additional houses, but all of them burnt down. And so my uncle ended up purchasing that, and it ended up getting included in his parcel. So now it's kind of just like a gigantic back lot, but it's completely overgrown, so you're not really going to see much footage of it. But for now, I'm just kind of piling all of the dead tree branches and cut down weeds and things out there. And it's something that I'll trim back and organize and sort out probably when it warms up again. But yeah, right now it's kind of just the storage for anything that's biodegradable. So at this point in the day, the sun was setting directly into the camera, and I didn't realize it. So a lot of this early footage is just kind of ruined by the lens flare, but that's okay. It's just about an hour of me reorganizing the stuff at the very, very front of the garage, just kind of throwing things into separate piles, trying to make a pathway so that I could actually get inside. And eventually I did, and that's when this moment came up. So, made it inside. It's really unsafe in here. You see this back wall is actually fire damaged. I didn't even realize that, but yeah, all this wood just comes apart in your hands. It's so soft from sitting out here in the rain. So if I pulled hard enough on these roof beams, they would just come right down. And actually the only thing that's holding these front beams up is actually the rail track for the lift master. So gotta be real careful what I touch in here. I shouldn't be in here, but yeah, the walls are kind of standing. I'm going to try and organize this a bit better. And so just another apology for the video quality. The first few days I was recording all the handheld shots with my cell phone, which is really just bare bones. It's kind of just the cheapest one I could get because I don't use my phone all that much. And so the recording quality is not very good. But later I started using my proper camera. And so that's just another one of those things where the quality will get better later, I promise. And I thought the shot was really funny. You could just see a tire just barely creeping out of the lens flare and rolling to a stop here. Yet another tire. So I do have a question for anyone that might be watching this, because I'm kind of experimenting with the style of the video at the moment. I haven't really decided on a lot of things on how I want to produce these, but for now I'm using a lot of just real-time clips, just shorter bits from the larger footage, because this was just a locked down camera that was just recording, for a couple of hours. And so I'm curious what you guys prefer for this type of project. Do you prefer shorter clips of just real-time footage, or would you rather see time lapses, like just sped up, fast-forwarded footage of the entire job? I think when I'm done with the vlog style videos on this garage, I'll take all of the time-lapse footage and just release it as a separate, just full time lapse without commentary. I know a lot of people like that style of video too, but for the commentated ones, I'm not 100% sure how I want to go about making them. So I'll probably do a mixture of both. I'll just experiment with it until I figure out what I like, and what you guys like as well. Oh, look at that, another tire. So at this point, I noticed that the footage was bad, and so I actually picked up the camera and moved it into a better shot. So as I said, the camera angles will get better, and the video quality will eventually get better as well. Here you get the interior, and this is the giant pile of debris that I am climbing over and attempting to organize. So yeah, it was around about the time that I got everything set up inside here that I started to realize that I had vastly underestimated what I was dealing with. I mean, just looking at this, you could see that the pile of wood is, again, almost as tall as I am, and it is composed of just all manner of different things. It is no simple feat to actually organize this. It's much more than just restacking it that's going to have to happen here. All right, at this point, I start tearing down this center beam, which had already fully collapsed. I was careful initially about taking anything off that was still connected to the structure, but I started to realize that a lot of these hanging beams were definitely not supporting any load. They weren't helping to hold anything up, and they were actually just pulling on the standing walls, and so potentially making the structure weaker overall. And so this is where I started to kind of knock some of that stuff down, which actually helped because it opened up the space more and just gave me more freedom to roam. These other beams to the side here were a little bit more difficult because a lot of them had wiring on them, and so they've got those like little metal wire covers that are anchored to the wood and also anchored to the walls, and so that's like the only thing that's holding some of this stuff together. And so I had to just absolutely beat the heck out of it to try and get it to break loose, but eventually I did, and I was able to knock that off there. And what do you know, here's another tire. And so I'm going to send it where all tires go. Over there. And so initially my approach was just to try to get similar lengths of lumber together. So I'm throwing off into the corner the longest pieces, and then the shorter ones are going into a spot that's off screen, and then the medium ones are going into that back corner over there. So again, it was just the idea that if I could organize things into similar categories, hopefully that would make it easier to make sense of all this. And it was shortly after this time that the laptop battery started to die, and so I lost my wide shot. Because the way I was recording these was just setting up my laptop with an external camera and just filming it directly to that, but the battery would only last a few hours while recording. It would just drain really quickly, and so unfortunately a lot of the process in the early days of the project wasn't really filmed because I could only film for a couple hours, but I was putting in really long days in the beginning, and eventually I got my hands on a battery bank so that I could just film all day with the laptop. But those longer days are later in the process. So yeah, the first few days there's a couple of steps that did not get recorded, which brings us to our next handheld footage. So as I've broken into this, I realized there's actually a lot more than just the garage roof in here. There's actually the wood from an old wheelchair ramp from my grandma's house. There's what was once a dog pen, also made out of wood. That's where the chicken wire's from. And the other random odds and ends projects. So yeah, there's a lot more junk hiding underneath this than I thought, and also far more tires. I keep finding tires everywhere, so this is even more than I thought it was going to be. Here's our current progress, minus a couple trees. It honestly looks even worse than when I started, so it's going great. So after this point, I continued working until the sun went down, and then I packed everything up and left it for the day. I ended up coming back the next day, which brings us here. All right, so it's day 2 on the garage. I ran out of light last night and had to stop because I forgot about daylight savings time. But yeah, looking at it now, you can hardly tell that any progress was made, but believe me, it has. I'm going to go ahead and get started sorting through all this. I'm just trying to put similar size pieces of wood together and kind of break through this giant pile of mess until I can actually see the floor. So that's our goal. Let's get to it. This is what everything looked like at the beginning of the second day. I had succeeded somewhat in my organizational strategy of, again, just putting similar lengths of wood together, but the pile in the middle was still vast and quite dense. This old pallet here that I just threw is actually the base of an old doghouse, which I did not realize was included in this pile of junk. And at the core of this pile was all the old garage doors, because there are 2 garages on this lot. There's the one that I'm in here, which is the one attached to my family home, and directly across from it is the garage to my uncle's house, the next door house. His has brick walls, but the roof and the doors were all wooden, and it collapsed one year because a tree fell on the roof, and so it just completely imploded. And so the way that all this stuff actually ended up piled in this garage was my other uncle, the younger one, that was interested in renovation projects. You see, the brick garage had stayed collapsed for years. There's 3 cars inside of it, and the roof was just, laying on top of them for years. And because none of those cars worked and they weren't really active projects or anything like that, it was very easy for my uncle to just kind of ignore them. But then one day, his brother was just kind of looking for a project, looking for something to do, and so he dismantled all of the collapsed parts of that garage, and that included the 3 garage doors, because it's a 3-car garage, as well as all of the roofing material, and he dragged it over and piled it up inside this garage, which had also collapsed because it was a flat roof garage, and one year with heavy snowfall, the weight just knocked the roof in. And so this one was imploded, but less catastrophically, and essentially all of the material from both roofs and both garage doors ended up stacked in here. But over the years, anytime there was debris or lumber from anything that needed to be demoed or any ongoing projects, this is where he would stack it. It was just on top of the debris from the garage collapses. So at one point there was a wooden wheelchair ramp that had to be constructed for my grandma, but after she passed, they tore that out and just threw all the lumber in the garage. And at a time when we were living here, we had a dog that I had built a wooden pen for, just a small section of fence, so he'd have an outdoor area that he could run around in without getting out. And after we left, that got dismantled and thrown in the garage, including his house, which we didn't bring with us. At one point, we were renovating the kitchen in my uncle's house, which I actually helped with, but all of the demo from that left a lot of wood and cabinets and things, and all of that got piled in the garage. And any old furniture or unwanted fixtures would be either dismantled and tossed in here or just thrown in wholesale. And I had not realized just how much had accumulated until I really started digging through it. And so I was thinking going into this that it was just the garage material and nothing else. I didn't realize that everything else was there too. Oh, and here's something really funny. You see, before piling the debris in here, we had a couple things in here as storage. And I found some of those things, including this. A computer monitor. Good old school one. Well, 2 of them actually. I ended up taking them home. They're now in my garage, and so maybe I'll clean them up and do something with them. I love old anachronistic 90s junk like that, and if I can't salvage them, maybe I can find some use for them. Now, these garage doors are actually one of the biggest pain points in this, was just because a lot of them were still connected with the old metal hardware, and so they didn't necessarily want to come apart so easily. Now, the wood was so soft from just weather damage that you could generally pull it apart by hand, but anything that was connected with metal hardware was really, really difficult. So yeah, a lot of these doors got pulled out in big sections like this, but most of the sections just disintegrated into their smaller pieces. And something that I don't think I really showed on camera, but that was a constant problem, was that these doors originally had windows in them, and so there were glass panes, many of which actually were still intact. Surprisingly, a lot of the window panes survived, but they're just interspersed throughout this pile, and the ones that didn't survive are also interspersed throughout this pile. And so something that I was finding the entire way, all the while I was digging through this pile of wood and debris, was giant shards of glass. And so I had found a drawer, just a loose drawer that I don't know the origin of, but it was relatively intact, and so I was just piling all the glass up in this drawer. And I think you'll see it in the background of a couple of shots here and there, but most of the time it was out of frame of the camera. Now, at this point, I realized I was close enough to the floor that I could almost taste it, and so I got this snow shovel out of my truck and started sifting around the smaller debris to see if I could in fact find the floor, and well, that's when this happened. There it is. Believe it or not, found the floor. It does exist. There's a lot more here than I thought. I don't know what I'm going to do with all this, but there's the floor. So I was really feeling optimistic, having finally gotten to the bottom of the pile, even if only in a small section. But the fact that I could confirm there was in fact a floor under there really felt good for morale. At one point, I grabbed these 2 lawn landscaping bags that I just had sitting in my truck, and I figured I could bag up some of the smaller pieces into them, but I realized pretty quickly that these bags were very underqualified for the job, and also that there was just way more debris than I could possibly get into 2 garbage bags. As with everything, I was overly optimistic and vastly underestimated what I was actually looking at, so that plan fizzled out really quickly, but it did lay the groundwork for something much more impactful later. And at this point, I started the shuffle of, moving stuff back and forth. So the monitors needed to go back onto the floor so that I could access the things at the base of the shelf that the camera was set up on and organize that pile of garbage. And by now I was reaching a point where a majority of the wood was softly sorted. You could still see a pretty significant pile near the entrance. That's just a little bit of everything, but all the really long pieces, the dimensional lumber, was really starting to feel sorted. And so I started taking the absolute smallest pieces, the ones that were like 2 feet in length or shorter, and shoving them into this shelf. There's just this big old school wooden garage shelf that I was using as my station for the laptop and the camera. And when I had started, there were tires sitting on it, and so I knew that it was still fairly sturdy, and so I felt pretty good about piling wood in there just to kind of help organize and get some of the stuff out of the way, and that ended up working out really well. And here I'll give you a look at how that was going. All right, here's where we're at. Just trying to organize this a little bit further to get more space in the middle here. So I got the flat pieces going that way, the long ones over there, the less long ones there, and then the shorter ones I'm trying to break down over here. I might be wondering why I don't just order a dumpster and throw all this stuff away, and well, that's the long-term plan. It's just, for now, that's not really a consideration for a few different reasons, but the plan is just to kind of get it out of my way until I can throw it away. Yeah, that's what we got going on. All right, progress update. I found my way to the far wall. Got all this stuff cleared out, and there's this giant concrete roller here. I don't know what the deal with that is, but I'm gonna have to figure out what to do with it. Here's the door to this garage, actually, at least half of it, and we're almost in good shape here. Wouldn't believe it, but I actually just found another tire here. That makes quite a few. So here's the wide shot. It's getting there. I swear every time I move something, someone's shoveling more stuff in behind me, because when I came in here, it really didn't look like there was that much stuff, but the more I dig into this pile, the deeper it seems to get. But my plan basically is to sort the wood by length and size, and so once I've got this wall clear, I can start sorting through that, moving it over there, and then we'll clear that wall and just kind of work our way around until everything is done. So there's a method to the madness, kind of. And so, at this point, I began converting my pile of wood into a stack of wood, and that all went pretty well, as you can see here. So here's my ghetto wood shelf. The plan is to take the longer beams and try to stack them up as vertically as possible on here, and hopefully have them stay out of the way. Yeah, this might work or it might not work, but one way or another, we're going to get through this. So the makeshift wood hutch is actually going pretty well so far. Got most everything over there that's going to go over there, and now we're coming across the other side and got this corner cleared out. Hopefully none of this junk was load bearing, but I don't think it was, and basically anything that fits in this spot is going to go in this spot. So yeah, that's the next step. Almost done, believe it or not. Almost done. Well, that went well for a few minutes, but there's still a lot more here, so goodness, what have I got myself into? Well, time to close up shop for the day. Sun's going down, I'm exhausted, and it's about as far as we got. Just about due for a tire fire, I think, but yeah, man, might need that dumpster after all. It's getting better, but I have no idea what I'm going to do with some of this stuff. Figure it out tomorrow. Oh, all right. It is day 3 on job site, and it is a windy one, so hopefully it doesn't rain. There's some questionable looking clouds in the sky on the distance, but it's not supposed to rain. Anyway, got a couple new friends here. This is Madam Trash Can and the Bucket Bros. So what I found underneath all this crap is there's actually a surprising amount of dirt on the ground, and so what I'm going to attempt to do is throw all of the miscellaneous wood scraps, anything larger than mulch but smaller than a plank, it's going to go in the trash can, and the dirt I will be hopefully carting out of here with these buckets, and we're going to send it out back behind the other garage because there's a big lot of empty land out here. So I'm just going to pile it up somewhere else and let nature reclaim it. This is hopefully the final day, but every time I look at this pile, it seems about 50% larger, so we'll see what we can do. So the dirt shoveling method turned out to be rather short-lived. It was wishful thinking again, just kind of underestimating the project, and while I could have done the whole thing this way, just 2 buckets at a time, it really wasn't as viable as I wanted to believe it was. And something that I also realized pretty quickly was that it wasn't all just dirt. There was a lot of just wood scraps and things buried in there, and so it was really hard to sift through with just a shovel. I could easily dig the shovel in, but when I'd go to pick it up, it would get caught on another hidden piece of wood or, you know, like a root or something, and the bucket method ended very quickly. Alright, well, that is day 3 of severely underestimating the workload. Turns out there's a lot more than just dirt under here. It's a lot of roots, a lot of everything, so it's not as simple as just shoveling it out and hauling it away. Even more debris than I could have imagined. Every time I think I'm at the floor, there's another foot of garbage underneath me. So we got almost all the wood dealt with, and I got room for more over there. That thing is collapsing, but I'm going to restack it in a way that I can hopefully store some more wood over there, and then hopefully all the wood scraps will end up on the outside of the walls, and then everything left in the middle will just be garbage. But gotta adopt a new strategy here. So with a lot of these like smaller scraps, there's like tiles, there's still roofing shingles, stuff like that in there. And so basically what I'm gonna do is just get a bunch of really thick trash bags and bag up as much of it as I can. Hopefully send it week by week into the city trash, and you know, we'll be left with the old wood, but otherwise it should be pretty clear in here after that. But it really seems like it's gonna rain, so I'm gonna have to call it quits for today. Let me get a wide shot right quick. There's our current progress. So, you know, not too bad, but certainly could be a lot better. Oh, by the way, found another tire. So on the 4th day, I came back with a giant pack of these contractor trash bags. They're just extremely large and thick trash bags, and so they're meant for dealing with this kind of construction waste and debris. And so I just unraveled a ton of these, and I started putting all the smaller pieces in them, because as I said, when I tried to dig through the mulch and the dirt at the bottom, I noticed that there were a lot of just wood scraps and things that were bigger than dirt but smaller than lumber. There was also a lot of press board, like OSB and just like glue board. I don't know what to call it, but you know, the type of stuff that really cheap flat pack furniture is made out of. There was a lot of that mixed in here, and when that stuff gets even the slightest bit wet, it just crumbles to pieces. And so a lot of this pile is actually just disintegrated press board, and so you would still get some larger chunks of the stuff that would be pretty easy to pick up and throw into a trash bag, but it wasn't together enough to where I could stack it. And so at this stage, it was just a matter of sorting out those smaller pieces of trash, things that couldn't be organized, but also couldn't be shoveled up. But anyway, that's going to be just about all I've got for this week's video. If you want to see the garage getting finished, be sure to check back next week. And after I get the finished commentary video out, like I said, I'll put together a full time lapse of all the long still footage. It's not going to be 100% complete because, as I said, there were some segments I wasn't able to record because I just didn't have the battery life. But as much as I could record, I did, and so I still have a lot, and it's still pretty fun to see the project slowly come to life. So please look forward to that as well. Anyway, I think I recorded an outro for this thing. Where's that at? Alright, that is going to be it for now. So if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. Fixing up this old house is an extensive process, and I'm going to have a lot more videos on the way. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.